Our focus now moves to Kansas, where Republicans in the legislature are flexing their muscles with supermajorities in the House and Senate. The latest instance involves a controversial bill. Well, really two bills packed into one.
I cannot and I will not support any discrimination against another human being, any way, shape, or form.
Despite House Democrats holding the floor for hours late last month, Republicans, without a public hearing, pushed through a measure delivering on a campaign promise. It bans trans people from using multi-person restrooms in public buildings that don't match their sex assigned at birth. Another clause lets someone sue trans people for $1,000 if they claim they've been aggrieved by that person in a bathroom. These rules were tacked onto a bill that affects the legal IDs of trans Kansans as well. Knowing Governor Laura Kelly could veto this bill, Republican leaders posted online, assuring her the legislature is ready to override any veto. Democratic counterparts tell me they believe these so-called wedge issues are getting out of hand, especially the way this went down.
This skirting the process, pushing things through because the supermajority has the numbers to not come to the table and look at what is best for Kansans, but just push these issues that they think are red meat for their voters. Kansans lose.
Republicans have defended the move and the suspension of the rules, claiming the bathroom measure especially protects women. Let's dive in and discuss what's happening in Topeka. Our Michael Mahoney's sticking around, joined by Pilar Pedraza, senior political reporter for Cake News. Let's start with the tone change that we're seeing in Topeka. Pilar, Republicans are not shy about their supermajority, especially when it comes to these campaign issues.
Yeah, and they're making no bones about it, setting rules aside, going through emergency approving emergency procedures that allow them to do things faster. They know that they have the power in the state house and they are using it right now. The only question really on some of these is going to end up being whether or not they have enough votes to withstand a veto.
Yeah, and you know, Mahoney, again, it is an election year. This has to color these decisions a little, if not a lot.
Yeah, in fact, that's one of the reasons this seems to be happening, in my opinion, on this. And this is a pretty slippery slope. The state of Missouri went through this a number of times in their state senate in the last couple of years, where they rammed things through at the last minute or in the final week, and it contributed to a breakdown in decorum and procedure in the state senate. I don't know what the Democrats in Kansas are going to do. I'm sure they're not happy about that. As Pilar said, the big question here is whether or not the Republicans hold on to enough of their supermajority that they can override an expected veto from Governor Kelly on this. So we'll see. But it's an election year in Kansas and in Missouri state politics, and so you're going to see red meat issues.
Yeah, and Pilar, what have you been seeing on that front in Topeka?
Oh, these are very much election year issues. These are issues that play to the Republican base. They are definitely signaling to those base voters that are going to show up in the primaries. My personal perspective is that a lot of this is driven by the fact that you have a number of people within the legislature, including the Senate president, who are running for governor. And they're trying to signal that, hey, we can get things done.
Yeah, it's a good point. You know, we talk about the supermajority. It seems to hold on certain issues, but not others, like redistricting, where they said they couldn't get the votes, thought that maybe they could to try to mount that. Didn't work. Still, Republicans aren't avoiding election-related bills, Pilar. What are you seeing?
Yeah, there are several that are out there that would drastically change how we run elections in Kansas. Several that would end advance voting in one form or another. That would make it more difficult to turn mail-in ballots in. For example, there's one bill that would require you, if you're delivering somebody else's mail-in ballot to the election office, like I take my mother's mail-in ballot in, I would have to not only sign it, which is current law, I would also have to put my driver's license on there. I have to be a registered voter. And my mother would have to write a letter, a physical letter giving me permission that gets delivered with that ballot under this one bill. And so that's just kind of an example of some of the things that are going on right now.
Yeah, they had a bill in committee over in Kansas just a few days ago that talked to the very issue that Pilar was just describing on the regulations on mail-in ballots. And no one testified in support of that bill. There were a couple of people that were neutral about it, but there were no supporters that were there to testify for the bill. But the bill moved through. Now, whether or not it gets through the entire legislature is another question. But it's another example of a issue that some Republicans believe that there's voter fraud in the state, and they want to at least address it on the record for campaigns.
Got about 30 seconds left. I did want to ask both of you about the gubernatorial primary debate that we saw on the Republican side. Mahoney, what was your takeaway?
That the long shots in this, Phil Sarnecki out of Wichita and Charlotte O'Hara from Johnson County, really were the ones that were attacking, and that's a sign that they believe that they need to make some difference and stand out from the rest of the field, who most of them agree on a lot of the issues.
Pilar?
Very similar. It's very difficult within this field for folks to differentiate themselves. They all are signaling to the same base, so they're trying to support the same basic issues that we're seeing pass through the legislature right now. But they're trying to find those differences to make them stand out, and that's kind of hard to do. So a lot of it is coming down to how long have you been in office, what kind of experience you have. Is that a good or bad thing?
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Pilar Pedraza, Michael Mahoney, thank you so much.